This is the Purple Passion Project with host and clinical sexologist, Dr. Stacy Friedman. This is your go-to podcast for raw, real, and irresistibly juicy conversations about sex, intimacy, connection, and everything in between. Whether you're feeling a little stuck in your love life, curious about what turns you on, or just craving conversations that actually matter, you're in the right place. So now, please welcome the host of the Purple Passion Project, Dr. Stacy Friedman.
What do you get when you mix purple, passion, and permission to be your true self? This podcast. Hello, I'm your host, Dr. Stacy, and this is the Purple Passion Project, coming to you live and unfiltered. And it's the show where we talk sex, intimacy, connection, and everything underneath the surface. Because let's be honest, small talk is boring and you're ready for the good stuff. So relax, drop your guard, get ready for some truth, laughs, maybe a few gasps, and a whole lot of passion. So today's episode might just rewire your entire love life. What if the reason you keep attracting emotionally unavailable partners is not just bad luck, but it's about your nervous system? So my guest today is Bern Mendez, and he is a neuroscience-based dating coach whose work has helped women in 24 countries, that's a lot of countries, finally find real, deeply committed love. And we're talking about why intense chemistry can be dangerous, how to stop winning over unavailable men, and also men, you're included too. We want to talk about how you men can embrace emotional intimacy without losing your power by being vulnerable. So it's juicy, it's grounded in science. It might just be the relationship breakthrough you did not know you needed. And so now we are going to welcome Bern to the stage.
Hey, Dr. Stacy, thank you so much for bringing me here. I'm excited to talk to you today.
24 countries, that's a lot of countries.
Yeah, with the magic of internet, it's easier now than before to be able to connect with people and all across the world.
Absolutely. So, you know, when you're reaching so many people, what actually inspired you to do what you do and have this coaching approach where you're mixing the neuroscience and emotional stuff and all that into your coaching?
What initially attracted me to this work, if I'm as honest as I can be, is my own personal pain.
Sure.
Like most of us, we experience something that's like the wound that has basically to attempt to be healed through doing something about it and perhaps helping others. And for me, it started early in life. I was 17 when I faced deep depression. And I went through a period of time where I didn't know how to get out of it and nothing seemed to work. And finally, something worked. And when it did, like a little light bulb came inside of me, feeling I have to teach this to other people. So I started from an early age, not thinking about intimacy because I didn't know anything about intimacy.
Most kids that age don't.
Yeah, but I did have the experience of feeling deeply rejected,
right,
and deeply unable to express my value with women at that stage of my life. And I think the combination of those two later in life, when I started sharing my message, it ended up being that most of the people listening to my message, not through any type of specific filtering, just through the just showed up, were women. And after many, many conversations, this specific area of life, intimacy, seemed to be at the forefront of what their struggles in life were. And it's not that this is the problem. Sometimes this is a symptom of something else.
Right.
So through a lot of work and more studies and more testing in the real lab, which is the world, what works, what doesn't, figured out that there's approaches that definitely work and some that don't. And I find this day and age, when there's so much information available, that a more scientific approach tends to work better, and it's a bit safer than just imagining stuff or coming up with my own theories. So yeah, that's how it all started.
Having like a science-based background, it helps people understand a little bit more why they are the way they are or how they're feeling, rather than just saying, oh, you need to do this or you need to do this. It helps people make sense of it, I think.
I think it does that, and it also does something in my world magical, which is removing shame. Because we're going to talk about it later, perhaps, but some of the things that I hear from my clients is the notion that maybe I'm attached to the wrong guy because my self-esteem is low. And you could look at it through that lens, or you could look at it through another lens, which is more biological.
Right.
And when you look at this as a challenge, that's basically your nervous system's involved in the process. It's not that you're flawed, is that there's something, some of the wiring is not
Going on.
necessarily working the way it needs to. You can rewire. It's
Right.
the difference between a feeling, the challenge is you versus your behavior. So I think behavior based change is much easier than let me change my identity and become a different human being.
Yeah, no, it makes sense because we are all wired differently according to our experience through life. And
Yeah.
so it's helpful to understand that and have a way to actually rewire, you
Yeah,
know?
exactly.
So, when you're talking about your nervous system helping you or not helping you, but sometimes potentially hurting you, choosing your relationships, what exactly does that mean when you talk about that?
Well, it means that your nervous system is scanning constantly for danger or threat, your automatic nervous system. And that is typically based on not just what you're experiencing in the moment, but what you learned through early childhood. So, I mean, at a high level, it means that the decisions we make in love are not just cognitive, they're physiological. So when you as a child, through maybe neglectful experiences, maybe some painful, even abusive experiences,
Right.
maybe through high highs and low lows, learned to calibrate that type of connection or love.
It's like a
uh,
memory. Your nervous
it's, yeah,
system.
I mean, like, then you confuse that level of connection with intimacy. So what
Right.
happens later in life is you might be consciously seeking a grounded, connected relationship, but if you're wired for that level of ups and downs, that's what you feel comfortable with, even though it's painful. So in that regard, you might find someone incredibly compelling, not despite the fact that they're bad for you, but because they're bad for you, because they remind you of what your nervous system has learned to interpret as safe and home.
Yeah, no, it makes sense because it's that, I guess, trauma response
Yeah.
or whatever your body is used to or, reacting to.
Yes.
So that definitely makes sense. And then you wonder a lot of times when you have women or men even that are strong and are, successful in business, successful in friendships, successful in so many
Yeah.
other things, and then you try to put them in a relationship, and you think, God, someone who is so intelligent, how could they be so stupid making these remarks or making these choices? But you're saying it's not really them, it's their nervous system.
Yeah, and the way I look at it, I mean, like the compassionate lens I step into on my best days is one where they're not necessarily making stupid choices. They're making choices that attempt to solve a problem, or maybe to not have them in danger. I mean, it doesn't make any logical sense, but if you learn that it's unsafe to experience depth with someone, because if you were to experience that with your caregivers, they would maybe be incredibly disrespectful or abusive, then it's an actual smart response of your nervous system, even though it doesn't help, to be avoidant, for example, because you think that that's going to protect you from the pain you experience. So it's almost like it's an attempt to save you from pain, even though it no longer works. So there's some level of intelligence there, because at the end of the day, you survived as a child based on that response. It would have been very unsafe for that human being to act a different way, but times change and now you want something different, and without consciously becoming aware of that, then you're bound to repeat it. Like Carl Jung talked about this. He said, until the unconscious becomes conscious, it will run your life and you will call it fate. And a lot of people seem to feel they have bad luck with men, for example, with women. It's not bad luck, it's just bad wiring. And that
That's
needs to
right.
be recentered, recalibrated.
Right. Right. And sometimes you could sit there and you could say to yourself, why am I doing this? And you could ask
Mm.
yourself these questions and you may not be able to come to a solution because you may not realize that it is something that's coming from your nervous system.
Exactly. There's a lot of things involved in this, but I
Right.
think that the best way to think about it is this entire thing called conscious relationships that we're seeking in one way or the other is a combination of lots of skills that no one has taught us. So the notion that we're going to go to win the lottery of human history, that's never happened ever before, where you have someone who is your intellectual match, your sexual sensei, your spiritual partner, your emotional cheerleader, can change diapers with one arm and kill a tiger with the other one. That has never happened. I mean, it's somewhat possible now, but the notion that we can get there just by winging it, or it's the most natural thing to experience, is just craziness. So I think that when we understand that there's something to be said about learning those skills, and that there's something to be said about rewiring the way we learn to interpret love, then we go from I'm a flawed human being with lots of faults to I'm a human being who's learning and needs to create some changes in behaviors. And that seems more doable.
Oh
than,
yeah, absolutely. Because you can have step when you're learning, which we'll talk about in a minute here, because I have a couple of questions for you about that, about
Sure.
skills. But it's trying to figure out, the steps, which will make it much easier to move forward, so people could have something written down where they could say, okay, this is something I can do. This is something I can do. Otherwise, I feel like so many people seem to be addicted to like the emotional chaos of it all.
Yeah, and the emotional chaos is not just something that you learn from what you experienced in childhood, but it also has to do with the way the brain's reward system works. Like if you look at the studies they've done on in intermittent reinforcement back in the day with mice, you get two groups of mice, and one basically has a cage, and every time the little mouse pulls the lever, they get a little pellet of food. And then you have another group of mice where when they pull the lever, sometimes you get food, sometimes you get nothing. The mice in that group become addicted to pulling the lever. Not only that, but when you stop the reward, when no longer anything comes out in both cages, the mice that learned basically that every time it came out, they just stopped doing it. The other ones continue far longer. So how do we translate that to human behavior? Well, when you're in a situationship with someone, with let's say a guy who messages you one day, beautiful, how are you, you're incredible, and
And you
then
get excited
three
and
days of nothing, and
right.
then reappearance again with maybe a little something hint of mystery, and then a week of nothing. That brain starts becoming addicted to that intermittent reinforcement. So that chaos is not just what you learn, but it's also these very addictive dopamine producing cortisol excretions, and
Literally
then dopamine
physical.
again. Like the whole
Yeah.
cycle is addictive. So it's one of those things where uh, it's when I talk to my clients, it's like that you don't have low self-esteem. You're experiencing a cycle of addiction right now. We just have to treat it, work on it, think of it that way.
Right. No, and the way you just said that, it just brought me right back to a client that I had where, I do more coaching, not therapy. And
Mhm.
I am able to tell usually when I've hit my space where I need to refer out to therapists.
For
And I
sure.
remember I was working with a girl who she's like, I don't understand. She goes, he'll like be on me like 1 or 2 days and then get me going, like exactly what you said. Oh, you're beautiful. You're this. I want to see you. I wanted this. And then won't talk for 3-4 days, won't answer, and then all of a sudden come back. And it's that cycle where she's like fanatic, like looking at her phone. Where's she? Where's that
Yeah.
person?
Yeah.
And I said to her, I said, you sound like you're in an addictive process where you're not understanding that this is not normal. I couldn't explain it as well as you did because I don't understand as much of the neuroscience of it, but it helps me realize, okay, I am in the right place when I say you need to go to therapy.
Yeah, I mean, because the thing with that is when somebody's experiencing that, and I mean, there's a gradient. I mean, it could be really intense, or it could be something more mild.
Oh, yeah,
But
no, it's
that's
intense.
the same psychology that takes place when you go to a casino in Las Vegas. That's why the casino always wins.
One more, one more,
Yeah,
one more.
it's one more, and basically nothing, nothing, nothing. You lost
Right,
$300, then you get 40 back, and your brain is like, ding, 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 dopamine production. I want to go for more. So you might lose a lot of cash, but you still think, you're going for more. So there's part of it. There's more aspects of it, but that's definitely a cycle that influences human beings, which is also part of why dating apps, if you don't have a system for regulating your nervous system when you use them,
you're just
are
so
equally addictive. It's like you're pulling the lever every single time you open the thing. Sometimes you get a genitalia that you don't expect from someone, and sometimes you get an incredible guy who wants to take you out on an amazing date. So you get the carrot and the stick, and that
You get a
mystery.
lot more carrots before, No.
Yeah, for sure.
I went through that after my divorce, and I'm just like, does anyone not send dick pics anymore? Come on, please already.
Yeah.
All right. Well, on that note, I'm just going to take a quick commercial break. And when we come back, I want to talk about some of the skills that you were talking about prior that we could potentially learn. So we'll be back in a minute.
Looking to reignite passion, deepen intimacy, or overcome challenges in your sex life? Meet Dr. Stacy Friedman, a clinical sexologist and certified sex coach with over 20 years of medical and coaching experience, dedicated to helping individuals and couples build more connected, confident, and satisfying intimate lives. From performance anxiety and desire mismatch to communication struggles and curiosity about pleasure and identity, Dr. Stacy creates a safe, judgment-free space for real transformation. Her unique blend of medical insight and compassionate coaching welcomes all, whether you're single, partnered, poly, queer, straight, exploring, or rediscovering yourself. Through one-to-one coaching, she helps clients explore their desires, break through barriers, and embrace a more empowered sexual self. And the best part? She offers a complimentary 15-minute consultation to ensure it's the right fit. Visit drstacyfriedman.com to schedule your free call today. Dr. Stacy Friedman, where her passion is to help you create yours.
And we're back. We're here with Bern, and we're talking about relationships and how it relates with neuroscience. And, one of the things that I had read on your profile is about talking about like intense chemistry.
Yeah.
Sometimes you'll have like these explosive sessions in bed with people and be like, oh my God, this was mind blowing. But yet a lot of times that could lead to chaos, and a lot of different types of relationships can go in all different directions. But you think because it's so intense that it's the right thing. Why does it feel so good? And why does it often lead to not so good?
Well, it feels so good because there's so much happening inside. I mean, like if you take a look maybe at someone like Helen Fisher, who studied a lot about the biochemistry of love, and you look at maybe studies that they've done, and she's not the only one. It's been replicated with other researchers around the world, where they take someone who's recently fallen in love with someone, and they take a cocaine addict, and they look at the brain. Same areas are activated. There's very similar experiences. Yeah, there's very similar experiences taking place. So it's something that when you're going through it, because of all the neurochemicals taking place, you hyper focus on someone, and you tend to see, imagine that you wear rose-colored glasses, basically, metaphorically speaking.
Right.
So you can see, you are hyper focused on that person. You anticipate.
You get the adrenaline, and
there's so much happening inside that you can tend to miss some important warning signals, because there's a part of you that kind of gets it. Yeah, red flags, but the other part of you, like, I want more. So, and the part of you that wants more is so intense that you could, the analogy I give my clients is, if you're not careful, when you connect with someone at the beginning, there's intense chemistry, you might find yourself one day on a dark alley eating tuna from a can, not knowing how you got there, metaphorically speaking, which means you connect with someone, he's really bad for you or she's really bad for you. And when you recognize it, it's too late, because you want to detach, but it's very difficult to detach from someone, because the same areas that activate physical pain activate when you detach from someone that you have intimacy with. So I really talk about, I think that we're in an age where people can be as open as they want to be. And in my world, it's still very important to have some parameters in place, so that those attachments that are of the really challenging kind of take place, like taking longer to get to know someone, definitely plays out for the best for most people when it's physical intimacy, and sexual intimacy even more, because there's going to be more intense of everything that takes place inside.
Yeah, so that's the thing, is that I've worked with so many people that are in those types of relationships where they are addicted to that sexual thing, and then don't understand why the people are not asking them out on dates, and they're not, because it's like you're giving everything and that's all you're doing is having sex. And if you don't change
Yeah.
that connection to be intimate and to
Yeah.
actually build the intimacy portion, all you're doing is you're being led by those chemicals in your
Yeah,
body.
I think that it really so the advice, because typically somebody was asking me the other day in an interview and said, well, what advice do you have for someone who wants a short-term relationship and they come to you as a client? It's like, I typically don't have people who come to me saying, I want a short-term relationship, help me with that, because that's so much easier to experience. But I
Right.
do have people who went through lots of short-term relationships or situationships and finally said, I've had it, it
I
felt
want something
fulfilling at times,
worthwhile.
but now it's like empty, so I want something deeper. So for that type of audience, which I think is the majority of people probably who listen to you, who want something deep versus something short-lived, a weekend boyfriend, for example, they want a long-term life partner, then it's getting to know someone. There's something that cannot be, there's a factor in the equation that can never be replaced, which is time. You
Mhm.
can have more conscious communication, and that can definitely enhance things, but there's nothing that will make up for having spent time with that human being, seeing them in good times, bad times, how they react when in different seasons of life. So if you take the approach of less is more at the beginning, then you sometimes will never get to the stage of having sex with that person because you've determined they're not good for me. So
You're
connecting with
saying
them
don't
sexually,
sleep with someone on the first date?
yeah, for sure. I'd say not just not sleep.
I don't like that.
I would, here's my recommendation. If you want a long-term relationship with
Right, right.
someone, create exclusivity before you do that. Because then you get a chance to know, because imagine that you connect with someone and that person's sleeping with 3 other people, just from a purely just health standard, that might be challenging. But also, if you start falling for the person and then you find out that that's happening, even if
Right.
initially it's just something, I mean, how many people do we all know who started something passionate thinking is just a fling, and they find themselves 2 years later being unable to detach from someone who's like not just not good, but really bad for them. Their
A lot of
self-esteem, their
people, I'm
support,
sure.
Yeah.
A lot of people. So, after having this mind-blowing sex and thinking that, oh, maybe we met the one, you're talking about that, we need some skills it's an art. Intimacy is an art. And
Yeah.
so when you say that we want to practice it like that, what does it really take to create this emotionally charged connection versus just sexually? What are some of the tips and some of the things that you tell people to do?
Well, I heard an analogy recently that made a lot of sense, so I'll reference it here. I didn't come up with it. Alain de Botton, which is an amazing thinker and writer, talks about the skills that we learn for intimacy and for relationships that no one teaches us growing up
Yeah, we
are
don't learn.
very similar to learning a new language. And the reason why I say this is because learning a language for some people is really easy, but for most of us, it's not the easiest thing if we didn't learn it growing up.
Right.
So if you think about learning, maybe, I don't know, I'm not going to say German because it's a very complicated language, but if you think about learning Portuguese or Italian or Spanish, if you don't speak it, that's going to be a language that's going to take some time to build. And there's going to be a feeling of, I want to communicate, but I can't. And there's a little bit of frustration, but there's also the commitment. If I really want to speak the language, it's going to take a little bit of time. So if you have that awareness of it's not going to be overnight, it's going to be a process that's worth, if you want to go live in a different country, you'd benefit tremendously from speaking the language
Right.
versus always speaking in English or your native language. So that's the frame. And then in terms of skills, what's it take? It's going to be a combination of different skills. There's a skill of self-awareness would be the start of the whole thing, because you can have communication skills, you can have other types of skills. If you're not regulated as a human being, then everything else is going to feel faulty. It's like wearing, I talk about this elegant exercise of dipping a pair of Chanel sunglasses in dog poop, putting them on, and then you're looking at the world with those lenses thinking that the world is brown. That's what equates not attuning to your own self and not regulating as a human being. So I'd say the first skill is self-awareness and self-regulation. Without those things, all the other skills are going to be faulty. When you have those two skills, which is something that's it's a practice for life, then learning to attune to another human being is incredibly important. And that means not just what they're saying, but how they're saying it, their nuanced self-expression, the ability to listen compassionately. It's like to read a human being and to relate back what you're sensing and feeling, and engage if you're on the same page or not. Again, another amazing skill.
Yeah, relating, you said relating to a human being and listening. There's so many people that as soon as you start talking, right away you get defensive rather than just listening and trying to understand what that person is feeling or
Yeah.
thinking and being compassionate about it. That's important.
Yeah, and I think that this happens sometimes, uh, as I said, because nobody's teaching us these things growing up. But so that would be one skill that we need to learn to attune to somebody else. There's the skill of repairing an interaction. The number one skill you're going to have to practice a million times in your life with someone is things are going to not go well, and you're going to have to come back and reassess what happened and make it better. If you don't have that skill, or if you come from a frame that's basically I'm right, you're wrong, then doom and gloom ensues a relationship. So that's
Right.
another skill. Attraction is a skill. you know there's a difference between entering a relationship and having something sustained versus putting yourself out there, which is incredibly vulnerable and incredibly challenging and risky at times. And how do you connect just enough to where you can be open, but not more, where you can basically are emotionally naked in front of people that don't deserve your nakedness yet?
Yeah, you
So
don't want to go and share like your entire life story with someone that you just meet.
yeah,
That time to give pieces and pieces and allow that vulnerability to blossom
that's
and
like a dance.
open.
It's the dance of vulnerability. It's 1 degree more vulnerable, 1 degree more present, 1 degree exactly. It's a back and forth. And then through time, which is the other factor, being able to gauge, is this person really safe?
Right.
Are they just saying what I want to hear so we can sleep together? So that's another skill. So there's attraction, there's attunement, there's repairing interactions, there's the ability to communicate and express needs, which again is in something super vulnerable to do, because they might reject you, they might say no. So how do you express a need as a request versus a complaint? A lot of people like to. A practical example: you can tell someone, "You hurt me so much the other day when you said this," to "I remember, or I think this is what happened, and I didn't appreciate it. Would you mind, please?" Similar, but you're coming from a frame that's more reference to yourself. You're also coming from the humble position that you don't own truth. If you say, "You did this to me," "No, I didn't," and there's a
Right,
piece of context
you're
for
pointing
40
blame,
minutes.
and right away
Yeah,
that's just going to cause the person to be defensive.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's great. And I know that a lot of women have not so great pickers many times when they're working on some of those trauma response reactions. And so maybe they'll pick people that are either unavailable, or they'll find men that they talk about and they say that they're boring. Why do we have such a hard time of women saying, "Oh, well, I'm not attracted to the nice guy," and they always want to have that bad boy thing, or they want to have that? Is it just because of the addictive feeling, that adrenaline that they're feeling, or like where is that
I
coming
think there's
from?
a combination of things. I think genuinely some people are more resonant with others. So I wouldn't go as far as saying, "Oh, if you're not liking someone, it's because your nervous system is messed up." No, I think that sometimes genuinely the person is not connecting in multiple different levels with that human being. Sometimes, however, it is that. Sometimes it is that you're used to something that is inconsistent, something that feels exciting but dangerous in not the best of ways. And when someone shows something that's more stable, the dopamine production that's in you're used to
Right.
is not taking place. So it might sound boring. So my advice is not to settle for someone that you're not feeling chemistry with, but it is to know that this idea and this BS myth that when you connect with someone, you'll know they're the one. First of all, the one doesn't exist. It's a myth. But if you do want to connect with someone who's highly resonant, it's okay if you don't feel that magic the first time you connect with them. As long as there's some compatibility and some values, that magic can increase. It doesn't always increase, but it can. And if you and I see a lot of people who are secretly optimizing for emotional intensity and for chemistry. And when they connect with someone who's an incredible potential partner, but they don't feel that surge of explosions, the angels didn't sing and their heart didn't explode, then they say, "Oh, that's just, I could never see myself with that person." And I ask those people to question their beliefs. Your
Right.
brain doesn't always tell you the truth. Sometimes it tells you things that are not true, but you can choose to believe. So if you take a bit of the approach of more time to get to know someone, and also getting to know more people at the same time, because that also matters. If you're only connecting with one person, then you have all your eggs in one basket, and especially if you're not having sex with that person, you're risking a lot in that moment by 3 months go by, you find something negative about the person that's really a deal breaker for you, you start from zero again. Where if you're connecting with 2 or 3 people who are conscious, then you all get a chance to decide who's the best fit for each other.
Yeah, and I think that so many people will, like you said, get together with somebody and not feel that right away. And I know, like, so many people I talk to that are dating, they'll look at a picture and they'll be like, oh, I'm not necessarily attracted to the person. So many of the people that I've wound up connecting with or been in relationships with are people that I've met in person that I've given opportunity, because you can't just tell from a picture.
Yeah.
You know, they're kind of going on the surface and seeing like, oh, that person's hot or whatever, and then they get all excited. But if you have that opportunity to get to know somebody, a lot of times it's that. I mean, I know they say that beauty is skin deep, but it's true. Like, you could be beautiful on the outside and not on the inside.
Yes.
So it's important to give that person the opportunity to woo you.
I think it's important to actually connect with people and quickly take it offline, because you can connect with someone who seems to be the right person and go through long text exchanges and feeling like you're really knowing the person, and you're not really, or worse, they're not who they say they are, and they're a scammer of sorts.
Or their pictures from 20 years ago, and then you see the person, because that happened to me.
So something I share with all my clients is, when you're about to go on a date with someone, first of all, don't spend ages trying to connect and learn who they are on text. This is the worst form of human communication. But when it's time to go on a date, ask for a video call. You're going to get so many more points of data with a video call. And the video call is not the determining factor in saying, hey, this person is the love of my life.
No,
it's simply, to rule out a hell no type experience where you arrive to the restaurant and for the next 2 hours, you're suffering in silence. Because the first second, you know that it's definitely not the right vibe. Maybe someone who has a really creepy energy, or someone who's dismissive or misogynistic, or something that's really not your thing, or 20 years different from the picture, you know?
Well, I'll tell you, because right now we have that ability to do that. I mean, almost everybody has some form of video on their phone. And when I had gone through the dating process with my husband, when I had gotten divorced, it was as soon as we connected online, we said, let's get off of this online, get on a call. Literally from day one of meeting on the phone, online, we were on FaceTime. So I knew exactly who I was going to meet up with. I knew exactly that he was real. Because I remember one time I met somebody in the library just to have coffee, because I didn't know who they were. And they walked in and I didn't know who it was. And so I said, oh, you look so different. They're like, oh yeah, my picture was from 10 years ago.
It's a little old.
And I'm like, 10 years ago. And right then and there, I knew. I'm like, okay, well, it's great meeting you. I have to get back to my work in the library. So it is important to be able to have that connection ahead of time, so you know what you're in for.
And then it's just a matter of doing it safely. I mean, you can, for example, give a person your phone number to do a FaceTime, or knowing that a person can reverse engineer your phone number and find your address, you can set up a free Zoom account, share the Zoom account, and whenever you find safety in that person, maybe then you share your phone number, So it's there's little things like that can make a big difference in terms of safety, because in this world, unfortunately, women have a higher risk of danger in dating than men. So those little things, like connecting on a safe space, making sure that it's a public place. Don't go hiking the first date. Don't have him pick you up in your house. Now he knows where you live. Like, it just
hiking in the woods. That's not
exactly. Let's go hiking at night. It's beautiful.
No. No, I remember what I did is, when I was dating, I would tell one of my best friends or my mom or whatever, I'm going out with this person. This is where I am. This is where I'm going to be. And if I don't return, at least where I am.
Here's the beauty right now. You can also share your location now, even if it's just temporarily for the day. So now they know exactly where you are. Right. And if anything happens, then you're set. And I know this may seem a little extreme, but I have had clients who get on a taxi with someone and the guy becomes incredibly handsy and they can't get out of the taxi. And that's a traumatic experience, It
happens. It happens. And that obviously affects the nervous system, which will affect, in relationships. And I think that a lot of women do question themselves as well, because there's so much in their head, like, am I with the right person? Am I not?
Yeah.
I'm not emotionally connected, but I'm sexually connected. I noticed that even in my practice, when I do a lot of the dating coaching, that there are a lot of women that choose unavailable men, whether
Yeah.
emotionally available. Is there some reason why people are connected to unavailable men?
I mean, there's many reasons, but one of them is think about it this way. If there's something you're deeply scared of, let's say intimacy is something you're deeply scared of, and you connect with someone who's out before they're in, you're never going to ultimately face that deep rejection of somebody seeing you, loving you, and then leaving you. The guy left before he even started. So that's one reason why people do it. Another reason is basically the attachment style that they have unexamined, basically. Leads them to connect with somebody who tends to be more avoidant. And the classic combination that is incredibly painful is somebody who's more anxiously attached with somebody who's more avoidantly attached. The more the person craves that connection, the more the person wants to run away.
By the
And
way,
then
right?
it's just like, it's horrible for both. So,
22.
yeah, it's important for you to recognize and understand what your attachment style is. And it's not an end all be all, and it's not static. It can change through time, which is a great thing. But without understanding that, then you might ask your partner or the potential partner to do things that they shouldn't be doing necessarily,
Right.
just because you're flaring up and feeling, or you might be choosing human beings without recognizing who they are and how they attach, that will never be happy. You'll never be happy with. You want someone who's more close to where you are, but also, I mean, I'll say this, because people who are securely attached tend to be better daters and enter relationships that last longer. The people who are recirculating the dating pool are more typically either avoidantly attached or actually attached. So it's so it's something to be aware of.
Right. So it's almost like, I'll hurt myself before they hurt me.
Yeah, and also, I mean, when you do experience that, I mean, the same cycle of uh, I want what I can't have,
Yeah.
takes
Yeah.
place. The whole intermittent reinforcement is taking place. So it's multiple things. Now, there's something else that we haven't talked about, which is the sunk cost fallacy. This cognitive bias that says when you've invested a lot in something that is a shitty thing for you, you might continue investing because you've invested a lot. So imagine someone who
You
has
don't want
this.
to lose everything you just invested.
Yeah, so imagine this trifecta. You're someone who experienced chaos growing up, and that's your thermostat. Chaos is intimacy. You go also into a connection with someone who's intermittently reinforcing you. Okay, not good, creates addiction. And then you do this for a couple of years. Now your brain is set on beyond the other challenges. You want to continue make it work because now you invested so much. So that's the kind of the place that some people find themselves in when they raise their hand and say, hey, I need some help because I keep bumping myself against the glass door and I need some perspective that goes beyond just understanding. Understanding is okay, but sometimes there's a shift that needs to happen beyond understanding to create change.
I see that. I don't know if it's the same kind of thought process, but with people maybe having an affair and thinking their partner might leave. I know that I've worked with people that, get addicted to the person that they're with, thinking, okay, they're going to leave. The person says they're going to leave. And then they say, oh, I'm not ready to leave yet, but soon. And
Yeah.
they keep holding on, waiting. Is that kind of like the same concept?
It's very similar. It's also, I mean, it's also this intermittency. I mean, they have some stability, but they also have that periods of time where the
Right.
person is with their wife, let's say,
Right.
and there's a mystery that takes place. What are they doing? What's happening? Like there's this jealousy, there's an incredible cocktail roller coaster of emotions that
Chaos.
is very, very addictive, right?
Yeah.
So there's that, but there's also this feeling of intense aliveness for both human beings. So the person who's cheating and the person who's the other partner, basically, even if they're single, there's a high degree of secrecy that heightens this intensity,
Right.
which makes people, I mean, even though it's something that intellectually they understand it's not ethical,
Right.
they just can't get out of because it feels so intense.
Right.
It's like
And
people who jump off do bungee jumping off bridges. They
right.
can kill themselves maybe, but they feel very alive when they do
The
it.
high. Yeah, the high. And then they're sitting there, they put so much work into it. I've been in this relationship for 3 years. They keep saying they're going to leave. And so you just longer and longer, they've invested so much into it. So that's kind of what made me think of it, because I've worked with people like that. But now I want to talk a little bit about men. We don't want to leave the men out.
Absolutely.
So I know that we're talking about women and their emotions and intimacy, but I also want to talk about the vulnerability of men because
Mhm.
I know that with society, a lot of men are not necessarily allowed to be emotional, to be sensitive, to
Yeah.
be, in that space. And so, how can women, how can men be in that space of emotional intimacy without feeling weak or without looking like, oh, they're vulnerable, they're, a wuss or whatever?
I think it's a multi-part answer, but I'll say here's a beginning. I think a beginning is understanding that this is something that you primarily do for yourself because you understand at some point in life you understand that carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders
It's
is
not worth
more than any human being can bear. So if you recognize that there's a feeling of lack of freedom in your connections. There's a feeling of there's all these emotions that are being felt in your nervous system, in your stomach, in your chest, and you can't get them out. And you're starting to suffer, and your connections with your children are starting to suffer. Your connection with your family is starting to suffer. Obviously, your connection with women is starting to suffer. Then that's like the first line of saying, you know what? There might be a better way than what I've been taught is strength. And I don't blame the men for this because they've been learning from the moment
society.
of birth.
Yeah.
Strength is stoicism, and stoicism not of the nuanced kind, but stoicism of the kind of don't express what you think, what you feel. Boys don't cry. You're weak.
Women reinforce that a lot, which I have to yell at some of my clients because they're like, oh, but he'll sometimes cry. And I'm like, it's okay. That shows strength that he feels vulnerable and sensitive enough and emotional enough to open up to you.
I think one way to start is connecting with men who are on the same type of path of growth. I mean, there's something magical that happens when a group of men sit with each other and they are real and express what they think and feel. That's a good beginning. Because when you witness in the group of maybe 10 men, one man who stands up and starts talking and naturally starts crying,
You
the
can feel
rest of the men feel this normalization of it's okay. And I also feel something about it's something really powerful that happens with
I
that. So
just
I
got
think,
goosebumps.
yeah, I mean,
It's
it's really
powerful.
powerful to be in presence of someone who's so courageous that they can speak their mind without having to guard themselves against the judgment of others. Now, if that group is also holding space for them, then guess what happens? And it doesn't have to be a group of 10 people. It could be just one person, where you say, here's what's going on in my heart. Here's what's up. Like therapy is incredibly helpful for this because a gifted therapist will co-regulate with you and show you basically the space of safety and inquire and ask good questions to where you can maybe for the first time in your life have someone who's not judging you, who's open-hearted, holding space for you, where you can practice that rewiring and then by nature of doing it there be able to replicate in the outside world. But I will say that as a man and a man growing up in Mexico City, of all places, that basically has a very defined way and very, I would say, archaic and way of looking at masculinity, for the most part, where gay people are a disease, not now, but I mean, back in 1975, that was the thing where anything, it just, there's a lack of nuance that's just big in Latin America, I would say, as a whole.
Right.
And learning to, I feel blessed to have a mom that sat me down from the moment I could speak to say, hey, how are you feeling today? And what was good in your day? And I was like, that's something I learned, but not everybody learns that way. So to be able to understand that it's incredibly, I'll give you this analogy. Imagine that you have a cell phone and that you start your day with your cell phone, and nowadays cell phones batteries tend to run low. After a couple of years of using your phone. So imagine you start your cell phone day with a battery that already has 30% of the battery or 40% of the battery gone. You're not going to last your day with a battery because it's going to die before the end of the day. You're going to have to recharge. That's what it feels like to not express your emotions as a man. You have all this energy that's being used in the background of those maybe of your cell phone without being able to express it. So I think it's a healthy thing to be able to know and learn in small ways, because it's not like let's go streaking metaphorically speaking, but take off your hat, and see what it feels like. And then when you feel safe, take off your scarf, and then it's like one step at a time,
Right.
being open.
And it's, nice that you say therapy because a lot of people especially that are masculine, are like, I'm too good for therapy. I don't need therapy. Therapy is for, people to share emotions.
Crazy people.
Right. And that's not me. And so to normalize therapy, to normalize the fact that you can be emotional, and sensitive is something that, like you said, can take off so much pressure off of a person and allow you to be true and real in a relationship, because otherwise,
Yeah. I mean, there's about I think within midlife men and women, I don't know the exact statistic right now. I have it in my research, but it's about maybe a 12 to 15 point spread maybe between women doing therapy and men being lesser of the two.
right,
But I think those guys who are doing it are learning that they are much more in tune with themselves, that they are far more attractive to women,
right.
and they're much more on demand. So I think that from a selfish and selfless perspective, both. I think it benefits you to figure out how to be more open.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I've heard, and I've actually been told when I was younger as well. I want to switch back to the women a little bit.
Yeah.
And, some of the women may feel that they might intimidate men.
Mm-hmm.
You had mentioned something about the intimidating men narrative in your profile, and what exactly is behind that? Because I know when I was younger and I was dating before I was initially married, I was always very strong and open-minded and assertive.
Yeah.
And I would go up to people and I'd be like, well, how come you never asked me out before, or something like that? She's like, oh, because you intimidate me. And I just never understood it, because I was always like the nicest person and I was always friendly. So what is kind of behind that?
I think that I would say this, to say that intimidation is just a myth would not be accurate. To say that all women who are in positions of power and are beautiful intimidate men, also not true. So here's the way I'll break it down. I'll give you two archetypes. There's going to be an archetype of a man who feels insecure about himself, who hasn't worked on himself, who hasn't necessarily connected to his purpose, and who connects with a woman who's beautiful and high achiever and makes good money and will feel intimidation. There's an archetype of a man who's worked on himself, who is also connected to his purpose, and connects with a woman who is a high achiever and may not feel intimidated, but may not feel enough connection to warrant the pursuit. So the caveat here being, if you're a woman who's a high achiever, if you're a woman who is gifted intellectually, and you have an openness of heart and radiance, that's incredibly attractive and compelling to the right guy. If you're that type of woman, but you're more on the cynical side and less on the vulnerable side and more on the thoughtful versus heartful expression, then it's not that the guy finds you intimidating. He just finds you interesting enough or compelling enough to connect with you. So that's why the softening of the heart and the gradual vulnerability can do wonders for women who are on that rung of excellence, because they become far more attractive to the right guy.
That's interesting. Yeah, because I always wondered, and I always, after thinking about it and what you said, is a lot of times it's the lack of the confidence maybe for the men to feel worthy enough. So that's something they would have to work on and be able to connect in that way. Because I just remember when I was younger, I was just say, my boyfriends would be like, yeah, you were just intimidating. And I'm like, what did I do wrong? Because I always would put that on myself.
Yeah. So I would say this, there is that group of men who need to work on themselves to be able to not feel less than for somebody who makes more than them, for example, or someone who has maybe more degrees than they do. And there is also that other side of things where they're just not necessarily connecting to that aliveness and that. Because I have clients who say, hey, we talk about, do you go out? And yes, I do go out. Do men approach you? No. Why do you think that is? It's my age. Like, it's not your age, and it's not even your clothing or your looks. It's your degree of openness, your degree of making eye contact with people. Being approachable is a skill,
Yes. The little flirts, the eye contact, the smile. Yeah.
So the more open you are, the more you'll be able to, in natural environments, who, in my way of looking at life in 2025, it's not been always the way, but I think in 2025, far outpace in terms of your ability to create the best connection versus online. Online works and can be very effective. And I have many clients who found their guy online, And I also find more and more this day and age that women are exhausted and depleted by dating apps because they're not the same thing that they used to be. And
Right.
if we don't have a strategy for connecting with people in real life, then we're at the mercy of the algorithm, you
Just go
know?
on like this,
Yeah.
swiping.
So
Yeah.
we need an approach that includes both online, but also offline, intentional offline, curated offline, not just going anywhere, but going to rooms where the people who are in those rooms are already filtered by the nature of the room. And you have a higher chance of meeting someone who's like-minded and shares the same values.
Sounds great. Great tips. And I think a lot more people need to learn the online dating a little bit better.
For sure, because I mean, the thing with online is the most important rule to learn if you're going to do online is that you need to know that you'll find at most 1% of people who are compatible and alike. If subconsciously you even have a 20% rule in the back of your mind saying, yeah, I mean, you've lost before you become, because then when you go and connect with 10 people who send you a dick pic back to back, then you say, this is broken, it doesn't work. It does work. You have to go through 90 more, perhaps, you
To go
know?
through 90 more dick pics.
And not necessarily dick pics, but guys who are going to say "stop?" question mark and send you an emoji instead of a question, and you ask them a
Right.
question and they reply with nothing. So
I would get like a hi, or I
yeah,
would be like, oh, your profile smile looks great. And then I would not get a response. It's like, you could at least just say, thanks, appreciate it, have a good day.
yeah. So because there's going to be a lot of energy, I mean, that needs to take place. I mean, and there's other things you can do, obviously, to stand out more there.
Right,
But
right,
the first thing is knowing that it's a long game. It's not an immediate thing. And
right.
that if you know with the mindset it's only 1%, then you don't get discouraged early on and throw in the towel. The other thing I'll say about online is that you need to be able to use it in spurts. If you have your app open all day long, it will be a miserable experience.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that sounds good. Because I had met my husband online, and I had that practice too, in meeting all these different people. So it was
Yeah.
crazy, but it was fun. It was fun. So we're going to take one more quick break, and then we'll come back and finish up our conversation.
Let's talk about toys. No, not the ones from your childhood. We're talking about the ones that make your bedroom way more fun. Whether you're flying solo or sharing the sheets with a partner or two, it's time to explore what a little buzz, tingle, or tease can do for your connection, your confidence, and your pleasure. Dr. Stacy isn't just a clinical sexologist and certified sex coach. She's also your personal guide to a whole world of adult play. On her website, you'll find thousands of carefully curated items to explore your wild side or deepen intimacy with your partner. From lubes and lotions to vibrators, bondage, lingerie, and more, everything is high quality, discreetly shipped, and hand-picked with your pleasure and comfort in mind. Because here's the truth. Pleasure is healthy, toys are normal, and adding a little spice to your love life can actually strengthen your relationship, improve communication, and boost your overall well-being. So go ahead, explore your fantasies, try something new, and turn up the heat. Click the shop link at drstacyfriedman.com and start your pleasure journey today. Dr. Stacy Friedman, where passion meets play.
We're back. So I wanted to talk about a little bit, since we were talking about dating. What is something that you feel when you're working with your clients, what is a belief system that you kind of help enforce in them that creates one of the biggest breakthroughs, that people, like the aha moments, help people say, gosh, you know what, I get it now. Do you have some of those?
Yeah, I would say the one meta belief that I think really impacts the way my clients are able to step up and get what they want is that notion and separation that the love they want is not the most natural thing in the world. Like, we've been led and indoctrinated with the idea love is just natural. It will happen when it's time. And God knows how many people have listened to that bad advice and find themselves at 40, 50, or 60 saying, well, that natural time never came. So I go more on the belief is this is not the natural thing, but it's something that can be learned and definitely experienced if we're willing to put in the time and the energy to learn the skills. So another one I would say belief that I help my clients is one where love is not the easiest thing to experience, but it's also not rocket science, and it's not pulling teeth. You know, there's a point of diminishing returns in any relationship. And when you find yourself asking your therapist and your mom and your family, why do they do this all the time? Maybe a sign they're not the right person for you. So there's a point of diminishing returns that where the overinvestment needs to slow down and say, okay, it should be challenging at times, but it should also be fun and opening and connected. And when you connect with someone who, for the most part, doesn't create that, I don't care how awesome their resume is or how many boxes they check, they're not a good fit for you.
And that's hard for some people to accept, because they're talking to themselves and they're trying to say, oh, well, on paper, it looks like this, 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 and this. And so, I think it's important for people to have to change their inner dialogue and be able to say, okay, well, this is what I'm thinking, but is this real? Is this what I should follow through with? Is this a good thing or a bad thing? I think a lot of people, when they're in these situations where they're meeting new people, they want it to work so bad that they talk themselves into it.
Yeah. It's that belief in scarcity, in unnecessary scarcity. There are elements that are challenging in dating, especially for successful midlife women these days. But I will say that there's abundance if you know how to look and you're able to open up certain parameters instead of going for what you learned in childhood you should go for. If you're open-minded, if you are able to recognize your blind spots, which is why it's so helpful to work with someone, because you can not bump yourself against the glass door all the time. There's a way to open it, and here's the key. So it's understanding that the inner dialogue, if you're telling yourself that guy doesn't exist, then for you it doesn't exist. It doesn't mean that it doesn't exist for real, but it just your brain will convince you and indoctrinate itself and brainwash itself with whatever you firmly and with conviction tell it a few times a day. So if your whole thing is all guys are cheaters, then that will be your reality.
True. I mean, that's what I'll hear some of my clients say, and I'm like, you're putting yourself out of the race when you're saying everybody is this or everybody is that. It's that talk that they're talking to themselves, and it's so important to have that positive outlook. And it is a skill. I mean, it really is a skill when you're meeting somebody and you're expecting everything to go a certain way, and you're expecting love in sex even. You know, I mean, so many people will come to me and they're like, oh, well, I thought it would be natural. And it's not always natural. Sometimes you have to say to your partner, this is what I like, this is what I want, this is what I need.
Exactly.
And don't just expect things to just work.
Or schedule it, which is unromantic, but actually works. This is because when people have busy lives and it never happens, then schedule the thing and then figure out how to make it more romantic within that time frame. But don't just wait for it to happen and it never happens.
Right. I think just people, their expectations need to be, I don't want to say lowered, but they need to change to understand that it's not all going to work the way you think it's going to work that you see on the movies. Sometimes you have to, I have couples that will get together and they're like, oh, I don't like my way my partner kisses. I just thought because we have everything else that I said, well, did you tell them what you like? And they're like, well, no. I said, do it. Show them how you want to be kissed.
Yeah.
You do it and not expect it to just,
absolutely,
work. It's definitely.
I have had clients who share something on the lines of, he's not a good kisser. Well, I mean, ask them, here's how I like to be kissed. No. Ask him and then judge if he's a good kisser after you share your preferences,
Exactly.
You have 40, 50, 60 years of doing it one way. What makes you think that the person's going to understand that, or that your way of kissing is the right one? I mean, it's just different.
Right. And it's different if you're going through divorces, dating, all that kind of stuff. Like you said, if someone's been doing something for one way for so many years, it change. Everybody needs something different and wants something different. So we have to be open to learning. We have to be open to, talking about it and communication and all that good stuff, and just getting out of our own way. Just
absolutely.
Getting out of our own way. So this has been really, really insightful. I think we've had some really, really good information for everybody. And I want people to be able to know how to contact you if they do want to work with you and work on all the neuroscience good stuff. So let us know where we can catch up with you.
Yeah, the easiest way to connect is to my website. It's bernmendez.com. That's BERNMENDZ.com. There's going to be a way for you to reach out. You can. There's a link to my YouTube channel. There's a quiz to figure out your blind spots also, and also a way to raise your hand if you want to connect and figure out if we can work together. for sure.
That's awesome. I just noticed your name is spelled wrong under the thing. It should be Mendez.
Yes.
So make sure that you don't put in the way he spelled his name.
No worries. Yeah, it's Mendez.
It will be in the show notes the correct
Perfect.
way. So that way, if anyone needs to reach out to you, we'll have all your information there. And
Yeah.
so this has been really good, just mixing the whole science and a lot of the good spiciness. And ladies, if you've been craving something that's real and grounded and transformative with love, this episode is going to take you into action, hopefully. So you could find Burn at Burn Mendez, and you'll check out the YouTube and everything for even more of his brilliance. So thank you again for being here.
Thank you so much, Dr. Stacy, for inviting me, and I really appreciate this conversation. It's a lot of fun, so thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. So thank you again for listening to the Purple Passion Project, where your pleasure is power and your intimacy is everything. If today stirred something in you, let it. And if you loved what you heard, make sure you subscribe to see more, and follow me all over social media at Dr. Stacy Friedman for resources and behind the scenes tidbits. Until next time, stay curious, stay turned on, and never apologize for wanting more. Thank you.
This has been the Purple Passion Project with host Dr. Stacy Friedman. Tune in each week as Dr. Stacy breaks down walls, busting myths, and gives you permission to want more with no shame, no filters, and definitely no small talk. Check in every Monday, 7 p.m. Eastern, on your favorite streaming platforms. We look forward to seeing you next time. Be sure to visit drstacyfriedman.com to learn more.